Hello everyone, I'm Michelle and welcome back to my channel. Today I want to talk to you about what native plants are, what they aren't, and why they are so important to include in our landscapes. If you love native plants like I do, then just sit back and enjoy. If not, and you're wondering what all the hype is about native plants, I am really hoping that today I can encourage you to add more native plants to your landscape. Behind me here is my island garden, and it is full of all native plants. I don't think I have any non-natives in this particular bed. So what are native plants? What's the definition of a native plant? There are some differing opinions out there, so I'm just going to tell you based on the research I've done over the years and how I feel what the definition of a native plant is. And so first off, a native plant is a plant that has evolved in a specific location over many, many years, developing relationships with the insects and the animals and the other plants around it. And within those relationships, whether good or bad, beneficial, mutual, whatever it may be, those relationships are what balance that ecosystem. And this happens over a very, very long time. Things that define a native plant, one of which is native plant, and specific probably more to the United States, is that native plants were surviving here in the US before European settlement. And the other is a native plant is not a plant that has been genetically modified by humans. So cultivars, nativars, all those types of things that have had the touch of a human hand, those are not native plants. Plants can cultivate themselves in the wild, and those can be native plants, but if it's been touched by humans, then it's not a native plant. Going back to location. Location is key to determining whether you're dealing with a native plant. So I have two resources that I use all the time. It's the BONAP website and the USDA website, and I will link those below so that you have access to them. And there you can look up on their maps specific plants, and you can zoom like all the way in, and you can go down to, I think you can go down to the county level to see if a plant is native in your area. A plant that's native in Virginia doesn't mean that it's native in Kentucky or Tennessee. A plant that's native to the Piedmont of Virginia doesn't mean that it's native to the coastal plains of Virginia. So location is very specific. Okay guys, now I'm going to take you around and I'm going to talk to you about what non-native plants are. They pretty much fall in direct contrast to all the things that native plants are. So non-native plants have typically been moved from their native location to another location based on indirect or direct human contact. These plants did not co-evolve with the natives in the area, so they have very, very few relationships built with any of the other local wildlife or plants. And finally, a plant that's been cultivated or bred for specific characteristics are non-native plants. Even if they are based off of a native, like a native or a cultivar or something like that, they are not native if there was human intervention to breed that plant. So behind me you can see I have some peonies here. Peonies are not native to where I live, but peonies are not invasive and is a topic that we'll get to in a second, but they are non-native plants and they don't really do anything to harm the native plant life, except maybe take up space that natives could be planted in. And that brings us to the difference between a native plant, a non-native plant, and an invasive plant. Okay, so behind me here, you should see a great expanse of ground cover, of a green ground cover. That green ground cover is called Japanese Pachysandra, and it is an invasive plant. An invasive plant is everything that a non-native plant is, Plus, it can cause economic or environmental damage to your local area. Some characteristics of invasive plants are they thrive in their new location, their non-native location. They reproduce very quickly, they're super hard to kill, and they have little to no natural predators. Now, I'll probably take the camera over there and zoom in on some of that Japanese Pachysandra patch, and you'll see that nothing is wrong with their leaves. Like, their leaves are perfect. And that's a characteristic of a non-native plant, is that there are not any relationships built to keep plants and animals in check, their populations in check. And so that's why this expanse of Japanese Pachysandra just thrives, and it provides no real benefit to the local ecosystem. You're probably wondering why I have that Japanese Pachysandra. Well, I inherited it when I bought the house, and in this area in Northern Virginia, Japanese Pachysandra is really, really popular, and it's very hard to remove. It's very easy to keep, and it covers the ground really easily, so people just use it. What a lot of people don't know is that we have a native Pachysandra. It's called the Allegheny Pachysandra. Now, the requirements might be slightly different, but it's basically the same. It does the same job. The only exception would be it grows a little slower. And then I just want to read to you the definition that the USDA has on their website defining invasive plants. So an invasive plant, the plant that is both non-native and able to establish on many sites, grow quickly, and spread to the point of disrupting plant communities and or ecosystems. Japanese Pachysandra. And like I said before, not all non-native plants are invasive, and it's okay to have non-native plants in your landscape. People love peonies and irises and different things like that, but I would definitely caution you against using invasive plants in your landscape, and to also encourage you to plant more natives in your landscape than non-natives. So, I think we've touched on this a little bit, but I'm going to go over it again. Why are invasive plants detrimental to your local environment? Because they crowd out the native plants. As you can see behind me, the Japanese Pachysandra is thriving. If you throw in a delicate native, or it doesn't even have to be delicate, it could be just pretty much any native. If you try and throw that native plant in there, unless it's a super enthusiastic, aggressive native plant, it's going to be crowded out both above ground and below ground. And what ends up happening is that the plants are eradicated from that area, which snowballs detrimentally, if that's even a word, in that particular local environment. Okay, so the other thing, and we did touch on this, is that Japanese Pachysandra there, like I said, it has perfect leaves. Nothing's eating it. So none of the native insects in the local ecosystem are benefiting from anything in that patch. If you're driving around in the suburbs of the United States, you will see all the yards full of non-native plants. That means that all those birds and insects and wildlife, they're not eating any of that. So it's basically a desert for wildlife. As beautiful as it may look, it is a desert for your local wildlife, even though that yard can look so extremely lush. Okay, so why are natives important? In my opinion, first and foremost, natives are important because they feed all the living things, and it goes right up the food chain. Native plants, after they're established, like you can see behind me over on this side, once they're established, they are low maintenance, and they also conserve water because you plant native plants in the conditions that they want and they need, and you do not need to artificially water them constantly. And a final note about native plants, and something that really got me so interested in native plants, was after I read the book by Doug Tallamy, Bringing Home Nature. And something that I hope possibly could, considering using natives in your landscape, is the one fact that Doug Tallamy discovered, that our native oak trees, I think it's the white oak, I'm not 100%, but that one native oak tree can support over 500 species of caterpillars. I'm not talking about 500 species of animals, that's 500 species of caterpillars alone. And an example to see how important this is that one brood of chickadees, those little babies, that one single brood needs 6,000 caterpillars to survive and make it. If you look at the ginkgo tree, they may look great and their leaves are perfect, but guess what? They only service 5 species of caterpillars. So I hope that is a reason for you, if you're not already growing natives, to go out and try some. And go to your local native nursery and talk to them and find out, like, if you're worried about them being untidy, have them recommend some things that you can keep tidy. Like I would recommend Hypericum prolificum or native ginger, tiarella, all those things. So there are lots of options for you to plant in your yard, native plants to plant in your yard, to give back to that local ecosystem in your landscape. Okay guys, well, I think that covers it for today. I just want to say thank you for joining me here today. And one last note, I have a book here. It's called Plant Invaders of the Mid-Atlantic Natural Areas. I highly recommend this book. It will help you to recognize invasive plants. It'll tell you other plants to choose instead, and it's just a really great resource. And if I'm able to find an Amazon link, I will link it below. Anyway, thank you for spending your time with me, and I will see you again next time.